ChatGPT is a program that creates text using artificial intelligence, and it's certain to have an impact on education. Let's look at what it is and consider some strategies for educators to respond to it. GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Maybe not very meaningful. The first paragraph you see at the top here was generated by ChatGPT and says a little bit about what GPT is. The second two paragraphs are what GPT wrote when I asked about the ethics of using it for writing essays. I've highlighted the key points. Let's look at just those key points. GPT does natural language processing tasks such as language translation, question answering, and text summarization. It's helpful for people with writing difficulties, like people with dyslexia. It's helpful for brainstorming, generating ideas, and editing, but it produces plagiarized content. And it's not designed as an educational tool. Plagiarism is about the biggest concern about AI text that educators have right now. And even though ChatGPT says it's not designed to be an educational tool, we do wonder, can it be used as one? As you can see, ChatGPT is really popular right now and sometimes has a waiting room. You can log in with an email or with your Google or Microsoft account. They have some disclaimers. The main window lists some examples, capabilities, and limitations. Let's try it out with our first example. I'll get rid of the in simple terms and just ask it to explain quantum computing. So how does it do this? Well, it's similar to AI image generation. It trawls the internet for information about the topic you're asking for and creates quality sentences drawing on that bank. That's pretty much what we want students to do. But this is in fact plagiarizing, and it doesn't give citations. Let's try a prompt of our own. This one is rather specific and perhaps a little unusual. We'll judge the quality of it later. Likely as an educator, you'll want some help figuring out if text submitted to you was written by a human or generated by artificial intelligence. There is a tool created by computer science student Edward Tian of Princeton called GPT-0, and we're going to take a look at that. You can see the link for it on the bottom of this window. GPT-0 analyzes perplexity, or the randomness of a text, and from that, it estimates the ability of ChatGPT to write text like the sample. It's really looking at how likely it is that a computer could search the internet for information and come up with a text similar to the sample if it's given the same prompt. Let's have it analyze that quantum computing text that ChatGPT generated for us. How does it do it? Well, a language model can predict a sample text for a prompt. It's going to look at perplexity, so a low perplexity number indicates the likelihood of a language model creating the text. The lower the number, the more likely it is to be AI generated. ZeroGPT looks at overall text perplexity, sentence perplexity, and the sentence with the highest perplexity. Then you can get an overall result at the end, and that tells you whether or not it thinks it was AI generated. Don't let those balloons fool you. This was AI generated, as you can see. The lower the score, the more likely it is to be AI generated. Let's take a look at something written by a human, me, in education grad school. You can see how much higher the text and sentence perplexity is. We'll compare those graphs of all of our samples later on. My overall score is 94. This was human generated. Let's try an undergraduate sample of an introductory paragraph. The graph has only 2 bars because it's just a short paragraph. And it doesn't give us a number result here because it's too short a sample, but it does tell us that it was likely human generated, which it was. Let's go back to the generated response on the Tolkien question. This has a much lower text perplexity than either of our human samples. And let's look at that final result. This is a low score of 10. This was indeed AI generated, even though it kind of looks like it might be unsophisticated undergraduate writing. Here is a graph of the scores for the 4 sample bits of writing. I used the full undergraduate paper rather than the little sample we tested earlier. Interestingly, the undergrad paper has a lot more perplexity than the grad assignment, which may be a result of the way that undergraduates write, as opposed to someone who's trying to write very clear prose for a graduate class on English education. You can see that there's a huge difference between the two papers on the outside that were written by a human being versus the two AI-generated texts in the middle. And here are the numbers that that chart was based on, in case you wanted to see them. Let's compare those graphs that ZeroGPT created. The ones on the top were written by a human being. The two bottom samples were the AI-generated ones. The key difference you notice is in the y-axis. It's a lot bigger for the human-generated samples. If you're wondering if Microsoft Word can be used to detect ChatGPT, you can see that its editor gives the sample a score of 89, just flagging two conciseness choices. If you check for similarity to online sources, at this time, it's going to tell you that there are no similarities because it's looking for a match. But every time that text is created in ChatGPT, it's a brand new effort presenting the information in a slightly different way, so it's not going to come up as a match. Turnitin users will be pleased to know that they are working on incorporating ZeroGPT into their service. From looking at ChatGPT's response to my Tolkien prompt and other tests I've run, here's my assessment as an English teacher on how well it writes. Generally speaking, it creates weak openings. It doesn't write hooks. It can write weak thesis statements when it's writing chunks of text, although it does a little better when you ask it to write a thesis statement. It has trouble linking multiple themes to each other. It will link the themes to works, but it has a harder time synthesizing your overall idea. It does show a lack of critical thinking and depth of analysis. It makes weak word choices at times. I hate conclusions that start with overall. Its conclusions are mostly summaries. They don't really express the significance of the text. On the plus side, it usually provides good topic sentences and evidence. We can use the responses as a model for students. It does show strong vocabulary. It can demonstrate sentence and paragraph structure. It's not really so good with essay structure. Now, in addition to being used to generate essays, it can be used to begin outlines and improve writing. I'm saying begin outlines rather than generate them because the students are still going to need to do a lot of work. But it's a great start, especially for students who struggle to organize their ideas into outlines. So this is what ChatGPT gave me when, instead of asking it to write the essay, I asked it to give me an outline. This outline would produce a much better paper than ChatGPT created when I just asked it to write for me. We have a number of sections. So section 2, and you'll see in a minute, section 3, could be elaborated to be multiple paragraphs. I would use this as a start for my students because, of course, their outlines should include what their examples are going to be, what their citations are, and instead of just saying discussion or analysis, it should have those actual ideas written out. So this is just a stub for an outline, but it could be a really useful starting point for students who struggle to write outlines. So here we have a sample on the left that's the student's original work, and I asked ChatGPT to improve it. That's what you see on the right. So it fixed some errors, but you can see it added an error that wasn't in the original. How would GPT-0 rate this? Well, it did give it a score of 10, saying it's mostly AI generated, even though it's mostly the student's own work. I used another version of GPT-0 and it found the one on the right a little bit perplexing. It thought that it showed a mix of being human and AI generated. How clever. Here are my suggestions for educators. Let students know that you'll be checking for AI text generation. Explain the drawbacks and limitations of text made through artificial intelligence. Make sure you explain what plagiarism is, what its consequences are, and that using text generated by a computer and submitting it as your own work is plagiarism. You can use this as a teachable moment. Explain what you're looking for in their essays and explain why AI text won't be able to do all that. Finally, you can write AI-proof prompts. For example, pick 2 themes discussed in class this semester and apply them to one of the works studied. You see, I don't say what the themes or the texts are. If you put this in ChatGPT, it will answer it. When I tried, it gave me 2 different answers, 2 themes for one work and then 2 different themes for another work. A student who's not paying attention might submit both of those, which might help you figure out that it was AI generated. Good luck out there. Remember, everything's a teachable moment.